They sold Serayne Lusk's reflection before they sold her body because a servant's face was easier to own than her breath. No one asked why a face had to be auctioned if its sight had truly lied. A false sight could be mocked. A purchased sight had to be removed. The auction table had been placed beneath the tallest mirror in the Verhall glass court, where every noble could watch a punishment without calling it cruelty. 12 blue candles burned along the black marble rim. A silver basin sat at the center, filled with water so still it looked like a slice of night. Above it, Dragon King Averic Verhall's throne rose beneath arching panes of dark glass, his crown sharp as black flame, his expression unreadable. Serayne stood barefoot beside the table with an oath chain around her throat and a strip of white glass cloth tied over her wrists. She wore the plain gray dress of a mirror servant, scrubbed thin at the sleeves from years of polishing royal surfaces. No noble hand was allowed to touch. Her dark hair had been combed back too tightly by the auction attendants, forcing her face open to the court. That was the point. A reflection could not be sold if the buyers could not see what they were taking. And a court that bought faces rarely wanted to know what the faces had seen. It only wanted the angle that made seeing belong to someone else. High Glass Treasurer Oswin Merrick lifted a crystal mallet. By order of the Dragon King, he announced, the mirror, servant Serayne Lusk, is stripped of reflection, right for unlawful sight. A murmur moved through the nobles, polished and pleased. Unlawful sight. Serayne had not stolen jewels. She had not broken a royal mirror. She had not touched the Dragon King. She had only cleaned the East Warglass after midnight and seen something the court mirrors had not meant to show her. Warglass did not show beauty. It kept the angles powerful men ordered hidden. And hidden angles always had owners. Inside that black pane, a vast dragon had appeared behind the king's reflection, chained by blue fire at the throat, pressing one golden eye against the glass, as if begging someone not to look away. She had dropped the cloth. The next morning, every noble mirror in the palace showed her face with a crack across the mouth. By noon, Oswin had called it contamination. By dusk, Avaric had looked down from his throne and ordered sentence. Sell the reflection, not exile, not death. Something cleaner, something that left her alive enough to remember being emptied. Oswin turned toward her. He was a narrow man with silver hair, a soft voice, and rings of blue glass on every finger. You understand the mercy of this court, Serayne Lusk? Serayne kept her chin lifted. Mercy usually leaves something behind. A few nobles laughed. Oswin smiled as if she had been charming rather than dangerous. You will keep your hands, your place, your breath. Only your reflection will be purchased, divided, and housed among loyal noble mirrors. Each buyer will receive one lawful angle of your face, cleansed of its improper sight. An angle could be owned. A whole witness was harder to divide. That was why Oswin sold people by pieces. Serayne looked toward the Dragon King. Averic watched her without leaning forward. He was beautiful in the way storms were beautiful from behind locked windows. Dark hair falling to his shoulders, pale skin under the cold mirror light, eyes the color of old gold half buried in ash. His black armor had no ornament except dragon scale plates along the collar. Nothing in his face apologized. That hurt more than hatred would have. He had seen the same mirror she had. He had to know, unless the court had taught even him not to see. Oswin lowered the mallet toward the silver basin. Opening claim. One reflection. Angle from the accused. Mouth and voice line. Suitable for a private accusation mirror. A noblewoman in blue silk raised a coin. 3 glass crowns. Serayne's stomach tightened. Mouth and voice line. A reflection sold by angle did not only remove an image, it altered how mirrors answered you. A woman whose mouth was sold might speak before glass and see only silence. A servant whose eyes were sold might pass a wash basin and find blank skin where her gaze should be. The court called it legal division. Servants called it being erased in pieces. Oswin nodded. Accepted. The noblewoman placed the first coin on the auction table. It should have shown silver. It turned blue. Not painted blue, not candle blue, living blue, as if fire had been sealed under metal and suddenly remembered air. The court quieted. The coin trembled once, then flattened its shine into a tiny circular mirror. Inside it appeared not Serayne's mouth, not her voice line, not any part of her face, A black dragon filled the coin. Its horns scraped against the small edge of the reflection. Blue fire chains cut across its throat and wings. One golden eye opened, huge and furious and wounded. The dragon struck the inside of the coin with a claw, and every blue candle on the auction table bent toward Serayne. The noblewoman screamed and dropped back. Oswin's smile vanished. Serayne could not move. The dragon in the coin turned its eye directly toward her, not choosing her, recognizing the angle she had been punished for seeing. Recognition was not rescue. It left the chain around her throat. Then a voice scraped through the silver basin, low enough to make the marble floor vibrate. Unlawful sight retained. The coin had not defended her. It had read what the auction tried to purchase. Avaric rose from his throne. The entire court dropped its eyes, not in reverence, but in terror of what his face might show. His crown cast a long shadow across the auction table. His gaze locked on the blue coin, then on Serayne, and for the first time since her sentence, the Dragon King looked less like the man who had condemned her than the man who had just discovered the punishment was never meant only for her. Oswin struck the mallet down hard. Remove the coin. No one touched it. The blue light spread. One by one, the coins in the noble purses began to glow. Silver became blue. Gold became blue. Every coin in the Vayhall glass court trembled into a tiny mirror, and inside every surface the same chained dragon opened its golden eyes. Serayne's reflection had not been sold yet. The auction had not opened her ownership. It had opened its own purchase record. Purchase records were colder than mirrors. They remembered who paid. But the first coin had already shown what the court had been buying for years. The coin had named the wound. It had not yet named what each purchase had taken. And a bought angle always left a missing face somewhere else. The coins had shown the chained dragon, but not what the glass court had purchased from him. A purchase could name the wound. It could not yet name who paid for the chain. Blue light still trembled across every noble hand. Serayne remained beside the auction table with the oath chain cold around her throat and the glass cloth tight around her wrists. Her reflection had not been divided yet. Her mouth had not been sold. Her eyes had not been assigned to some noble mirror where another woman could own the angle of her seeing. But the first coin still burned on the black marble table, and inside its tiny round surface, the chained dragon's golden eye watched her through blue fire. It did not break the chain around her throat. It did not rise from the coin. It did not claim her before the court. That was almost worse. Rescue could be denied as sorcery. Recognition stayed in the room and made every noble purse dangerous. Dangerous things were harder to dismiss when they had been paid for. High-glass treasurer Oswin Merrick recovered first, because men who built laws around ownership knew how to step around shame. He lifted one hand, rings of blue glass catching the coin light. The auction is suspended for inspection. Serayne looked at the glowing coins in the noble purses. Suspended? Oswin's eyes sharpened. You will speak only when questioned. She has been questioned by every coin in this hall, Avaric said. His voice did not rise. It did not need to. The mirrors behind the throne darkened at the edges, as if even glass knew when a king's patience had become a blade. Oswin bowed toward him. Majesty, the disturbance is not evidence. Purchase records cannot be tried through a mirror. Servant's unlawful sight. There it was. Not denial. Doctrine. Serayne felt the oath chain tighten against her throat as the phrase moved through the court. Unlawful sight contamination. The same language that had turned what she saw into a crime. The same language that would make every blue coin her fault if no one forced the record to keep speaking. Avaric looked at Oswin. The coin did not show her reflection. Precisely, Oswin said. Her improper sight has contaminated the transaction before lawful transfer. Serayne stared at the first coin. Its blue surface trembled. The dragon's chain cut deep into one black wing. The coin did not protect her from the auction table. It only held a record the table had not meant to open, and records did not care who they embarrassed. She stepped closer. The guards moved. Avaric lifted one hand. They stopped. Serayne did not look at him. If she did, she might see regret and mistake it for safety. She leaned toward the coin and said, "Read what was bought before my face." Oswin struck the crystal mallet against the table. No. The blue candles bent low. Every coin in the hall rang at once. It was not music. It was payment remembering pressure. Silver purses shook, gold chains at noble waists flashed blue. The coin on the auction table spun once, then flattened into a perfect glass circle. 4 lines appeared in blue fire across its surface. Reflection right entered. Dragon angle divided. Blue chain purchased. Servant sight blamed. The coins had named the purchase. They had not yet named the first buyer. The hall did not move. Serayne read the second line until it hurt more than the oath chain. Dragon angle divided. The dragon had not been hidden whole behind one mirror. Pieces of his true reflection had been bought, separated, assigned, one angle to a noble hall, another to a council mirror, another to accusation glass, another to royal war glass. No single pane would show enough for power to contradict itself. That was how mirrors learned obedience, by being given only one angle of the truth. No noble would own guilt. Each coin would own only a lawful angle. Avaric descended the first step from the throne. His face had gone still in a way that was not calm. Calm belonged to people with distance. This was the expression of a man discovering the cage had been built partly from his own commands. Blue chain purchased, he said. Oswin bowed again. An old stabilizing instrument, Majesty. Reflection division keeps volatile dragon force from overwhelming the royal mirrors. Avaric's golden ash eyes shifted to Serayne's throat chain, then to the coin, then to the mirrors surrounding the court, all of them clean, obedient, and empty of any dragon's wound. I let them auction her face, he said, because a servant's sight was easier to punish than my dragon's chain. His guilt did not loosen her oath chain. It only entered the glass beside it. Serayne did not forgive him for saying it, but she heard the weight in it. Oswin's hand closed around the auction ledger, a long book bound in pale glass leather. Majesty, I advise immediate closure of all purchase records until the council can determine how the accused's contamination entered crown coinage. Serayne turned toward him. You wanted my face divided because I saw what your coins had already divided, and a divided dragon still left a payment trail. His soft voice thinned. You saw nothing lawful. I saw the missing angle. Oswin stepped toward the table and reached for the first blue coin. Avaric moved, then stopped. Serayne saw the moment he understood the trap. If he seized Oswin now, the treasurer would claim royal interference. If she touched the coin, he would call her sight contamination. If the coin vanished into the auction ledger, the record would close with her still bound and accused. Oswin's fingers hovered over the glowing surface. Serayne pressed the front of her oath chain against the table edge until cold metal bit into her throat. Read before he calls. Purchase silence. The coin screamed blue. Purchase record active. Mirror servant bound. Auction ledger closing. Dragon angle retained. Oswin's hand froze. Inside every coin, the chained dragon turned its head not toward freedom, but toward the mirrors lining the noble walls. One by one, those mirrors flickered with tiny blue fractures. The glass court had not been buying servant reflections alone. Each noble coin had purchased a lawful angle of Avaric's chained dragon, dividing the beast's true reflection into obedient mirrors and leaving Serayne's unlawful sight to carry the blame. The coins had named the purchase, but not who paid for the blue chain. A purchase could name the buyer. It could not yet name what the bought silence made a king command. The Verhall glass court stood inside a silence bright enough to cut. Every noble coin still held the same impossible blue. Not prophecy, not mercy, not rescue, only purchase. Memory burning through metal that had been touched too many times by clean hands. Serayne remained at the auction table with the oath chain around her throat. The front of it had bitten a shallow red line where she had leaned into the marble to keep the first coin speaking. No one loosened it. The coin had exposed the divided dragon, but exposure did not unmake ownership. The chained beast still stared from every noble purse in fragments. One golden eye here, one horn there, one wing trapped in a lady's bracelet coin, one throat angle hidden in the coin on the table. A dragon divided into lawful surfaces was still chained, and a king shown only obedient surfaces could still call obedience judgment. Oswin Merrick kept one hand over the pale glass leather auction ledger. His face had recovered its polished control, but the blue glass rings on his fingers glowed faintly from within, as if the record under the table had begun to read the man holding it. "This ends now," he said. "The first purchase category has been contaminated by unlawful sight. Further reading would be procedural violence against the throne." Serayne looked at the coin. Procedural violence sounds cleaner than theft. A few nobles turned their faces away. Oswin did not. Chain purchase records cannot be tried through a mirror, servant's unlawful sight. There it was again. Doctrine wrapped around fear. Avaric stood halfway down from his throne, not beside Serayne, not yet close enough to turn his guilt into interference. His black crown still shadowed his brow. His eyes stayed fixed on the blue coin, as if he had begun to understand that even a king could spend years looking into mirrors arranged to keep him from himself. That was the crueler cage, not hiding the throne, but teaching it what not to see. Serayne's voice was hoarse from the chain. "Read who bought the chain before my face." Oswin struck the auction ledger with his palm. "The accused will not command royal purchase memory." "The accused is still the surface you tried to sell," she said. The coin rang. Not loudly. Enough. Every coin in the hall answered with a thin blue vibration, a sound like glass cooling after fire. The coin on the table spun once, then stilled. Its surface deepened from mirror blue to war-glass blue, darker at the rim, bright at the center. Inside it, the dragon's throat filled the reflection. Blue chains crossed black scales so tightly that each breath looked like pain trapped under law. 4 lines burned across the coin. Coronation coin entered. Glass treasurer seal applied. Dragon throat angle purchased. King reflection divided. The coin had named the first purchase. It had not yet named the first command born from it. Avaric stopped breathing. Serayne saw it. So did Oswin. The first buyer had not been a jealous noblewoman, not a rival court, not even some old council house hiding behind loyal mirrors. The record named a coronation coin. The ceremonial coin struck when Avaric's reign began, stamped with his young profile, his crown, his untested authority, and the glass treasurer's seal beneath the dragon crest. Oswin spoke quickly. "Coronation instruments are symbolic. They do not represent personal purchase." Serayne looked at him. "Then why did it buy his dragon's throat?" The coin flared. A vision opened above the auction table. Years earlier, the same court, brighter, crowded with banners and flawless mirrors. A younger Avaric stood before the coronation basin, not yet hard in the face, not yet taught to wear stillness as armor. Oswin, younger too, placed a blue-silver coin into the basin and pressed his glass treasurer seal over the water. The mirrors behind the throne bent inward. A black dragon shape appeared for one breath behind Avaric's reflection. Then the throat angle was taken. Not the whole dragon, only the part that would have roared. Blue chains sealed around the reflected throat. The young king's mirror grew clean, obedient, kingly, silent where the dragon should have contradicted him. A clean reflection could still teach a king cruelty if it cut out the part that roared no. Avaric looked at Oswin. "You sealed Ashvar's throat at my coronation." Oswin bowed with perfect sorrow. "I stabilized a dangerous ascension. You divided my reflection. I protected your rule." Avaric's jaw tightened. His gaze moved to Serayne, to the chain around her throat, to the coin showing the same angle of suffocation that her punishment had tried to purchase. "If my coronation coin bought the chain," he said, "then my throne has been wearing a reflection someone else divided." The confession did not free her. It did not make him innocent. It only gave his guilt a shape large enough for the court to see. Guilt was not release. It was another angle finally becoming visible. Serayne swallowed against metal. "You did not sell my sight because it lied. You sold it because it reached the angle your coin paid to hide. And hidden angles had already written sentences before mine." Oswin's face went pale and cold. She twists royal memory through contamination. He reached for the auction ledger. Avaric moved one step, then stopped. Serayne saw the restraint cut through him. If he seized the ledger, Oswin would call it royal panic. If he broke the coin, the purchase trail would end with a servant still accused of corrupt sight. If he tore the chain from her throat, he would give the court a clean reason to say the Dragon King had interrupted evidence to save the woman who exposed him. Serayne leaned forward until the oath chain pressed deeper into her skin. "Read before he closes the coronation." The coin burned so blue the mirrors dimmed. Purchase origin active. Mirror servant bound. Coronation record exposed. Auction ledger closing. Oswin's fingers locked around the ledger clasp. The coin gave one final image, the coronation coin sinking under Oswin's seal while the dragon's throat angle was drawn into blue chain, then reflected back for years through mirrors that showed Averic a king without a beast screaming behind him. The blue chain had not been bought by the nobles first. It had been purchased with a coronation coin through Oswin's seal, buying the dragon's throat angle before Avaric learned to read his own reflection. But a silenced dragon throat had not stayed silent inside mirrors. It had become law. The coins had named the first buyer, but not the first sentence born from the divided king reflection. Serayne could still feel the oath chain against her throat, cold and narrow, as if the court wanted her to remember that truth did not remove ownership by itself. Blue coin light shivered over her wrists, over the auction table, over the faces of nobles who had spent years buying clean angles and calling them loyalty. The first coin still held the chained dragon's throat. The mirrors behind the throne still showed Dragon King Averic Verhall as whole. That was the lie. Not that he had no dragon. That every judgment he gave had been reflected back to him, without the part of Ashvar that would have roared no. Oswin Merrick stood beside the auction ledger with one hand on its clasp. His pale glass leather book seemed to breathe under his fingers, pages pressing outward as if purchase memory wanted to continue and law wanted to suffocate it. He had not confessed. Men like Oswin rarely did. They waited for procedure to become a wall tall enough to hide behind. "This reading has ended," he said. "The coronation purchase has no standing in present judgment." Serayne swallowed, and the chain cut the movement short. Then why are the mirrors afraid of remembering it? A few noble mirrors trembled. Not enough to crack. Enough to show they had heard. Oswin's eyes narrowed. "Command. Reflection records cannot be tried through a mirror, servant's unlawful sight." Avaric stood very still on the lower step of his throne. The blue light caught the black edges of his crown. He looked more dangerous in silence than in anger, but Serayne no longer mistook danger for justice. He had ordered her reflections sold. Whatever had been removed from his mirrors, his mouth had still spoken the sentence. The coin did not free her. The dragon did not claim her. The court still waited for her to become illegal again. Serayne leaned closer to the glowing coin. "Read what the clean mirrors made him command." Oswin struck the auction ledger hard enough that the sound cracked across the hall. "She will not direct royal judgment memory." The coin answered before any guard could move. Blue fire poured from its rim and ran across the auction table into the silver basin. The basin water darkened. Then every mirror around the hall changed, not fully, not honestly, but in narrow strips. One strip from each surface turned blue, and inside those thin, reflected wounds, Avaric appeared again and again, seated in judgment over different servants, different witnesses, different broken faces. 4 lines burned across the basin. Clean mirror entered. Dragon objection removed. Glass verdict accepted. Servant witness punished. Serayne read the last line until the words became a weight in her chest. Servant witness punished. Not only her. The basin opened into a vision. A young stable servant stood before a side mirror, trembling as he swore the Western tribute glass had shown noble hands exchanging prisoner names. Avaric, colder and younger, sat beneath judgment mirrors, so flawless they gave back only his authority. Behind him, in the blue strip the old mirrors had removed, Ashvar's dragon mouth strained against a chain, roaring soundlessly. The clean mirrors showed no objection. Avaric signed exile. The vision shifted. A kitchen girl with burned fingers said a feast mirror had shown poisoned wine being poured before a council banquet. The mirrors around Avaric reflected her fear as hysteria. In the missing blue strip, Ashvar slammed his chained throat against the glass, trying to break through silence. Avaric ordered her reflection mouth sealed for lying. The vision shifted again. A gray-haired mirror servant knelt where Serayne now stood, accused of seeing dragonfire beneath a noble marriage glass. Oswin stood behind the auction table even then, younger but smiling the same way. Avaric signed the division order while his clean mirror showed a calm king giving a necessary verdict. In the missing angle, Ashvar roared, "No." No sound reached the throne. The vision vanished. The court remained. Serayne's throat hurt. Avaric did not speak at first. His face looked carved hollow by what the mirrors had returned to him. But hollow was not innocence. Hollow was only the place where truth finally entered. If my mirrors remove the part of me that heard Ashvar roar, no, he said, then my judgments have been wearing silence as certainty. Oswin bowed sharply. Majesty, you gave those judgments under lawful reflection. I gave them, Averic said. The words were quiet. They mattered because they did not run. Oswin's jaw tightened. A king cannot be held hostage by every servant who claims a mirror contradicted him. Serayne looked at Averic, then at the blue strips still pulsing in the mirrors. You punished my sight because it found the part of you your mirrors had been paid to remove. Averic took the sentence without turning away. Oswin moved suddenly, not toward Serayne this time. Toward the narrow command mirror beside the auction table, a tall glass panel mounted in silver claws. His blue rings flashed as he lifted the crystal mallet. Averic stepped forward, then stopped. Serayne saw why. If he seized Oswin's wrist, the treasurer would call it royal interference with command records. If Averic shattered the mirror himself, he would destroy the very proof of what his judgments had become. If Serayne touched it, Oswin would call her sight contamination again. So she did the only thing still left to her. She pressed the oath chain harder against the auction table, letting its cold bite turn her voice rough. Read before he breaks the command that punished me. The mirrors screamed blue. Command record active. Mirror servant bound. Dragon objection retained. Glass verdict unstable. Oswin's mallet hovered inches from the command mirror. Inside the glass, Ashvar's chained throat appeared again, strained open around a roar. No clean mirror had allowed Averic to hear. The divided king reflection had not merely hidden Ashvar's throat, it had removed every dragon objection from Averic's judgment mirrors, making silence look like certainty while servant witnesses were punished for seeing the angle his throne had bought away. The command mirror held Ashvar's silent roar, but not the names of those punished beneath it. Oswin's crystal mallet remained lifted beside the tall silver-clawed glass, frozen a hand's width from shattering the record. Blue fire trembled along its edge. Inside the mirror, the dragon's chained throat strained open around a sound the court had bought away years ago, and still Serayne stood bound before the auction table with the oath chain cutting the red line at her throat. No dragon came out. No coin broke her chain. No mirror made the court merciful. The proof remained colder than mercy, and colder things took longer to kill. Averic stood close enough now that Serayne could feel the force of him like heat behind winter glass. He did not touch her. He did not touch Oswin. His restraint had sharpened into something painful, not because he was helpless, but because every careless act of power would give the glass treasurer the excuse he needed. Oswin lowered the mallet slowly. The command record has shown enough, he said. Serayne's mouth tasted like metal. Enough for whom? For the dignity of the throne. She turned her head as far as the oath chain allowed. The throne was not the only thing your mirrors made dignified. Oswin's eyes cooled. Be careful, mirror servant. The old title landed like dust. Mirror servant. Not witness. Not woman. Not the surface they had failed to own yet. Serayne looked at the blue strips inside the mirrors, where the erased objections still pulsed faintly. Read who was punished before my sight. Oswin's voice cut through the hall. Witness inventories cannot be tried through a mirror. Servant's unlawful sight. Averic looked at him. Witness inventories? A mistake. Small, but real. Oswin had named the room behind the locked door. Serayne felt the coin on the auction table heat blue. It did not answer her because it loved her. It answered because purchase records remembered order, price, seal, and removal. If the glass court had bought away angles of truth, every missing reflection had passed through something paid for. The first coin rang. Then the noble purses rang with it. Blue fire threaded from coin to coin, then climbed the tall command mirror like veins under skin. The mirror did not crack. It opened in narrow horizontal lines, like shelves being drawn from a sealed cabinet. 4 lines burned across the glass. Witness name entered. Reflection angle stripped. Noble mirror cleaned. Dragon objection buried. Averic's face changed at the second line. Reflection angle stripped. Serayne knew that phrase too well. It was what Oswin had promised for her mouth, her eyes, her face. A lawful angle. A clean division. a punishment that left the body standing after the self had been sold. The command mirror opened into a vision. A boy, barely older than 17, knelt before the same auction table. His brown hands clenched so tightly his knuckles shone. One eye was reflected in a blue coin, the other eye was still his. Oswin wrote his name into the auction ledger, then lifted a pale glass blade through the coin's surface. The boy did not scream when the angle was stripped. He only blinked, and in every mirror behind him, one side of his gaze went blank. A nobleman took the coin. His hall mirror grew flawless. The blue strip, where Ashvar had roared no sank under silver polish. The vision shifted. A laundress stood with her reflection hands, sold because she had seen blood washed from a council mirror before dawn. Her body still had hands. Her mirrors did not. Every basin returned her wrists as smooth, empty sleeves, so no court could ever ask what she had touched. Another shift. An old mirror keeper bent beneath oath chain and glass cloth. His reflection spine was sold to a noble house after he testified that Avaric's war glass had shown Ashvar thrashing behind a royal campaign verdict. Afterward, no mirror ever showed him standing straight again. The court watched without breathing. Serayne did not. She breathed because stopping would make their silence stronger. Avaric read each face with the expression of a king being forced to meet judgments he had signed after mirrors removed the part of him that should have resisted. But his shock did not soften the truth. He had signed. He had spoken. He had worn the clean reflection and called it certainty. Oswin closed his fingers around the ledger. Servants punished under lawful sight division cannot be restored through spectacle. Serayne's voice came low. You made spectacle when you sold us piece by piece. Avaric looked at the auction table. How many? Oswin did not answer. The coins did. 100 blue glints opened across noble purses, bracelets, chains, belt clasps, and mirror frames. Not enough to free anyone. Enough to show purchase. Avaric's jaw tightened until the shadows under his cheekbones sharpened. How many did I sentence under clean mirrors? Oswin's face remained smooth. Majesty, every reign requires difficult verdicts. Serayne looked at Avaric. Difficult verdicts are easier when the objection has been purchased away. He did not look away from her. No, he said, they are not easier, they are mine. The words moved through the hall with a different weight than apology. Ownership, too late for the stripped witnesses, but too honest for Oswin's comfort. The glass treasurer snapped the auction ledger open. Then I will protect the throne from further contamination. He dragged one blue ring across the page. The witness visions began to fold shut. Serayne pressed her throat chain against the table until pain flashed white behind her eyes. Read before he cleans the names again. The command mirror screamed. Witness inventory active. Mirror servant bound. Ledger closure attempted. First stripped angle retained. The tallest mirror above the throne darkened. Inside it, a new image appeared. Not Serayne, not Avaric, but the first servant witness ever entered into Oswin's private auction ledger. A woman kneeling with her reflection, eyes already removed, while the first noble mirror behind her turned flawless, and Ashvar's objection vanished from the glass. The glass court had not begun by selling Serayne's reflection. It had begun by stripping servant witnesses one angle at a time, using each purchased face to polish noble mirrors clean, while the dragon's objection disappeared behind obedience. The first stripped witness remained inside the throne mirror, but her missing eyes were not looking at Avaric. They were looking behind Oswin. Serayne followed the angle as far as the oath chain allowed. Pain tightened along her throat where metal had already marked the skin. The tall mirror above the throne still held the kneeling woman with empty reflection eyes, but the blue light from those missing eyes stretched across the hall toward a narrow, covered mirror near the council doors. It had been there all night, wrapped in white glass cloth, too plain for decoration and too carefully hidden to be useless. Oswin saw Serayne notice it. For the first time, his hand left the auction ledger. Not by much. Enough. Avaric's gaze shifted to the covered mirror. What is that? Oswin bowed. A council record glass, Majesty, sealed for archival dignity. Serayne's voice scraped against the chain. Dignity is what this court calls a locked surface. The blue coins trembled. A nobleman whispered, "Do not uncover it." That was how fear confessed when people did not. Avaric took one step toward the covered mirror. Oswin moved with him. Majesty, First mirror records are not relevant to the accused reflection. Right. Serayne looked at the image of the kneeling woman inside the throne mirror. The missing reflection eyes glowed brighter now. Not alive, not begging, only pointing. Records did not plead. They directed. She leaned toward the auction coin. Read whose mirror was cleaned first. Oswin turned sharply. First, mirror purchase records cannot be tried through a mirror servant's unlawful sight. The court had learned the rhythm by now. Every time Oswin named a forbidden category, the blue coins grew brighter. Avaric did not touch the covered mirror. He stopped with his hand at his side, fingers curled as if restraint had become a weapon he hated holding. Let it read. The coin on the auction table rang once. The white glass cloth over the narrow mirror darkened from beneath. Blue fire traced old purchase marks along the covered frame, revealing layered seals. Council seal, treasury seal, noble witness seal, and beneath them all, Oswin's glass ring mark. 4 lines appeared across the covered cloth. Servant eyes entered. Council mirror polished. Dragon objection removed. First verdict preserved. Serayne stared at the first line. Servant eyes entered. Not sight. Eyes. Not because the body was taken, but because the mirror answer was. The court had not needed to blind the woman in life. It had only needed every surface to stop returning what she had seen. Avaric's voice lowered. Uncover it. Oswin bowed again. Majesty, I advise, uncover it. No servant moved. They were all too aware that hands could be punished by mirrors even when mouths stayed silent. So Oswin, trapped by the king's public command, pulled the cloth down himself. The narrow mirror beneath was flawless. Too flawless. It reflected the court with perfect obedience. Nobles standing dignified, the auction table orderly, Avaric whole, Serayne small, Oswin loyal. No blue cracks, no dragon wound, no kneeling witness. A clean lie. Then the blue coin struck the table by itself. The mirror changed. Inside it appeared the same kneeling woman from the throne glass, younger now, dragged before a council table. Her reflection eyes still shone whole. She pointed toward a war mirror behind the young council and said something Serayne could not hear. In the removed blue angle, Ashvar's chained throat strained against glass, roaring no. The council did not look. Oswin stood behind them, younger, patient, holding the first blue coin. The coin entered the mirror frame. The woman's reflection eyes vanished. The council mirror turned flawless. A verdict was signed. Avaric read the vision with his face carved still. What verdict? Oswin's answer came too fast. Old council maintenance. The mirror answered before Serayne could. Dragon division authorized. Servant witness stripped. Clean reflection adopted. Royal judgment trained. Serayne felt the last line like cold water down her spine. Royal judgment trained. Not corrupted once. Trained. The clean mirrors had not only hidden Ashvar from Avaric, they had taught the throne to trust whatever returned without objection. They had made a king believe silence was confirmation, a flawless surface was justice, and a servant who saw more than glass allowed was danger. Avaric looked at Serayne then, and she saw the wound open in him. Not innocence. Recognition. He had been trained, yes, but he had obeyed the lesson. My judgments were trained by cleaned mirrors, he said. Oswin's jaw tightened. Your judgments were protected from volatile dragon contradiction. Contradiction is not treason. It is when it fractures authority. Serayne lifted her chin despite the chain. Authority that cannot survive contradiction buys silence and calls it order. The blue coin flared. Oswin snapped the auction ledger open and dragged his ring across the page. The narrow mirror began to cloud white again, swallowing the kneeling witness's face from the edges inward. Serayne pressed her chained throat against the table until the metal cut into the old red line. Read before he makes the first witness clean again. The covered mirror screamed without sound. First mirror active. Mirror servant bound. Witness eyes retained. Verdict origin exposed. The image sharpened one last time. The first servant witness losing her reflection. Eyes so the council mirror could approve the first dragon. Division verdict. The verdict that made every later clean mirror lawful. The first clean mirror had not been made to beautify the court. It had been made to teach royal judgment obedience, stripping a servant witness's eyes so the council could authorize Ashvar's division without ever seeing the dragon roar no. The first clean mirror had taught royal judgment obedience, but not where the stolen witness eyes had gone. Serayne felt that missing part like pressure behind her own gaze. The narrow council mirror still held the image of the first servant witness kneeling before a verdict that had made Ashvar's division lawful. Her reflection eyes had been stripped. The council mirror had turned flawless, and Avaric's throne had learned to trust glass that never argued back. But an angle taken from one face did not vanish. A souled reflection always had to be housed somewhere. Oswin knew that. The way his fingers tightened on the auction ledger told Serayne before the coins did. Avaric remained near the uncovered mirror, his face pale beneath the cold blue light. He did not look like a man discovering one lie. He looked like a king, beginning to understand that an entire court had been built from surfaces trained to agree with him. Still, he did not touch Serayne's chain. Still, he did not shatter the ledger. Guilt was learning restraint, and restraint was not yet repair. Serayne leaned toward the coin on the auction table. Read where the stripped eyes were housed. Oswin turned on her. Reflection. Housing records cannot be tried through a mirror. Servant's unlawful sight. Several nobles shifted. Not in confusion. In fear. They owned mirrors. Every noble house in Verhall owned them. Bride mirrors, accusation mirrors, inheritance mirrors, treaty mirrors, mourning mirrors, private mirrors that never contradicted family power. If servant eyes had been housed somewhere, the court already knew where the trail might lead. The first coin rang. Then the noble mirrors answered. Not all at once. Not with rebellion. One thin blue line appeared along the edge of a duchess's hand mirror. Another split the surface of a nobleman's belt glass. Another trembled inside the tall marriage mirror near the western pillars. 4 lines burned across the auction basin. Witness eyes removed. Noble mirror housed. Clean angle purchased. Servant face emptied. Serayne closed her eyes for 1 second. Servant face emptied. That was what had nearly happened to her. Not death, not exile. A living body walking through the palace, while every reflective surface kept pieces of her for someone else. The basin opened into a vision. A noble house at night. A private hall lined with flawless mirrors. Servants passing with trays, heads lowered. On the central wall, a mirror shone with impossible clarity, reflecting the noble family as generous, beautiful, lawful. But behind the polish, one stolen servant eye floated like a blue ember, forced to look outward without ever being allowed to testify. The eye belonged to the first witness. Her sight had not been destroyed. It had been installed. The vision shifted to another house. A treaty mirror reflected 2 noble lords shaking hands over a border bargain. The glass showed no betrayal, no hidden knife, no unpaid servant blood. In the blue underlayer, another witness angle strained against the polish, forced to make the surface stable. Again, mirror after mirror. A kitchen girl's reflection hands behind a banquet mirror. A stable boy's stolen eye beneath a war glass. An old mirror keeper's bent reflection spine inside an inheritance pane, keeping a noble bloodline standing straighter than it deserved. Serayne's throat tightened against the oath chain. You did not only divide us, you made us hold up their lies. Oswin's voice stayed soft. Noble mirrors require stabilizing surfaces. Servant reflections are less volatile than dragon force. Avaric looked at him. You use stripped servants to replace Ashvar's objections, to preserve state clarity, to polish noble lies. Oswin's eyes flashed. To prevent the collapse of reflection. Law. Without clean mirrors, every house would accuse, every house, every treaty would rot, every marriage would fracture. Servant angles gave the realm continuity. Serayne looked at the blue eye trapped inside the vision. Continuity for whom? The coin flared. Avaric's jaw tightened. How many noble mirrors house-stripped witnesses? Oswin did not answer. The mirrors did. Blue marks appeared around the court like hidden wounds reopening. Rings of light on hand mirrors, table mirrors, lineage mirrors, oath mirrors. Hundreds of tiny glows, each one a purchased piece of someone who had seen too much. Avarik looked at the nobles. They looked away. Not all of them guilty of the first purchase. But many had inherited the clean mirrors. Many had used them. Many had believed the obedience because it favored them. Serayne said, "You punished my sight because it threatened their clean houses." Oswin stepped toward the auction table. "The accused is attempting to convert lawful ownership into moral panic." "No," Serayne said. "I am asking the coin to read the receipt." The auction ledger snapped open by itself. Oswin slammed one palm onto the page, trying to pin it shut. Blue light leaked between his fingers. Avarik moved again, and stopped again. Serayne saw his restraint tremble. He wanted to end this with power. But power had already been trained by mirrors, coins, and seals. If he acted before the housing record finished, every noble with a clean mirror would call the reading servant contamination. So Serayne pressed the oath chain harder against the table. Her voice came rough. "Read before he calls stolen eyes stability." The mirrors screamed blue. Reflection housing active. Mirror servant bound. Noble ownership exposed. Eye angle retained. In the tall mirror above the throne, the first stripped witness opened her missing reflection eyes for one breath. Not alive. Not free. Only visible. Then every noble mirror in the hall showed the same thing beneath its polished surface. A stolen servant angle holding the glass clean. The glass court had not bought flawless mirrors. It had bought pieces of servant witnesses to make noble reflections obedient, housing stolen eyes, mouths, hands, and spines beneath clean glass so every lie could look lawful from the right angle. The noble mirrors had shown the housed servant angles, but not why Serayne's unsold face could make them visible. That question changed the fear in the room. Before, the nobles had feared exposure. Now they feared the surface through which exposure had entered. Their eyes moved from the glowing mirrors to Serayne's face, then to the oath chain at her throat, then to the first blue coin still burning on the auction table. She could feel their attention like cold fingers. Not desire now, not contempt, calculation. A face not yet divided had become more dangerous than a face already sold. Oswin Merrick understood it first because the system belonged to him. He lifted the auction ledger from the table and held it against his chest, as if parchment and glass leather could shield him from the mirrors he had trained. The reflection. Housing display is complete. The accused has now contaminated noble ownership records beyond lawful range. Serayne's throat hurt too much to laugh. "You call everything contaminated after it begins telling the truth." Oswin looked at Avarik. "Majesty, she is no longer merely a punished servant. She is becoming a reflection hazard." The coin on the table pulsed. Avarik's eyes narrowed. "Becoming?" Oswin went still. One word had slipped. Serayne heard it too. Becoming meant there had been a name for what she might become. A category. A law. A forbidden place in the ledger waiting before her punishment ever began. She looked at the blue coin. "Read why my face had to be sold whole." Oswin's voice sharpened. "Identity of surface records cannot be tried through a mirror. Servants' unlawful sight." The mirrors along the walls flickered. Not with rebellion, with recognition of another locked rule. Avarik took a step toward the auction table, then stopped before his shadow touched the coin. He had learned where Oswin's traps were laid. If he stood too near, the glass treasurer would claim royal pressure. If he took Serayne's chain away, the record would end with pity instead of proof. If he shattered Oswin's ledger, every noble mirror would close around its stolen servant angles and call itself preserved. Serayne leaned toward the coin until the oath chain pressed under her jaw. "Read why my sight retained the purchase." The coin did not move. For one terrible breath, nothing answered. Then every blue coin in the hall turned its face toward her. Serayne felt the reaction through her skin, as if 100 tiny mirrors had found the same angle in her bones. She was not chosen by them. She was not blessed. She was simply the only surface in the court not yet cut into pieces. Blue fire rose from the auction basin and shaped 4 lines in the air. War glass contact entered. Unlawful sight retained. Coin glass witness identified. Reflection sale prepared. The hall seemed to tilt. Coin glass witness. Oswin closed the ledger so hard the sound cracked like ice. Averic read the third line aloud. Coin glass witness identified. Serayne kept her eyes on Oswin. You knew before the auction. Oswin's mouth thinned. I knew you were dangerous. You knew I could read purchases. I knew a servant who touched war, glass after midnight, and retained forbidden sight, could pull old ownership records through coin surfaces. Not a confession. An explanation he thought sounded lawful. Serayne felt the oath chain tremble against her throat. The coin opened another vision. The East war glass. Midnight. Serayne alone with a cleaning cloth, lantern dimmed low, breath fogging the black surface. She reached up to wipe ash from the corner where no noble ever looked. Beneath the soot, one blue angle glowed. Not Ashvar whole. Only the throat angle, the purchased angle. The missing no. She saw it, and the war glass saw her seeing it. The vision shifted. Oswin in a narrow record chamber, staring at a ledger page that had begun to glow blue around her name. His ring touched the line. Serayne Lusk. Mirror servant. War glass contact retained. Coin glass witness risk. Then his hand moved lower. Recommended remedy. Reflection division. Before purchase trail spreads. Avaric's face darkened. You recommended the sale before I sentenced her. Oswin bowed. I recommended lawful containment. I ordered it. Yes, Maestu. The answer was smooth. Cruel because it was true. Avaric had ordered it. Oswin had prepared the trap, but Avaric's voice had made it royal. A clean mirror had shown him contamination. A trained court had offered procedure. A servant had stood below him, and he had chosen the easier surface. Serayne looked at him. Your mirror showed you a servant hazard. His jaw tightened. And I believed it. The words did not release her, but they did not run. Oswin stepped toward the auction ledger. Coin glass witnesses are forbidden because they make ownership unstable. Every sale, every mirror, every noble claim can be dragged backward through payment. A kingdom cannot survive if purchase itself becomes accusation. Serayne's voice came rough but clear. A kingdom cannot survive if purchase is allowed to own sight. The blue coins rang. Oswin's hand moved to the ledger clasp. Then the witness category must be closed. Avaric moved again. Again he stopped. Serayne saw the violence in him, and the restraint that cost more. So she pressed her chained throat to the marble edge and held the coin's gaze. Read before he sells the name of what I am. The coin screamed blue. Coin glass witness active. Mirror servant bound. Reflection sale incomplete. Purchase trail open. Oswin's ledger flew half open in his hands, pages whipping to a prepared auction order bearing Serayne's name, her face-angled divisions, and a final seal meant to scatter her reflection across noble mirrors before the coins could finish remembering. Serayne had not been placed at the auction table because her sight had lied. She had been placed there because, while her reflection remained whole, every purchased angle in Verhall could still be read through coin glass. The coins had named Serayne a coin glass witness, but not where Oswin meant to scatter her face. That was the next danger. Not the auction already interrupted. Not the blue coin still burning on the table. Not even the chained dragon staring from every noble purse. The danger was the prepared order inside Oswin's ledger. Her face, angled divisions written before the court ever raised a bid. Her mouth, eyes, throat line, brow shadow, and mirror name assigned in neat columns as if she had already been cut. Serayne remained bound with the oath chain at her throat. The chain had not loosened when the coins named her witness. The mirrors had not freed her when they showed the old crimes. Avaric had not reached for her, though the restraint in him looked close to breaking. Good. If he broke too soon, Oswin would survive inside the word interference. Oswin held the auction ledger open, pages whipping beneath his blue glass rings. The witness category is unstable. Final division must proceed before further contamination spreads through noble property. A noblewoman whispered, Proceed? Serayne looked at the page bearing her name. You mean finish selling me. Oswin's expression did not change. Your reflection, right, was lawfully stripped. My reflection was not sold yet, which is why the disorder continues. The blue coin pulsed once. Avaric's voice cut low through the hall. You prepared her buyers before the auction. Oswin bowed. Pre-allocation is common in high-risk reflection cases. Serayne's throat tightened. High risk means whole. It means dangerous. It means not yet divided enough for you. The noble mirrors flickered. Not all of them. Only those already holding stolen angles beneath their clean surfaces. They understood division better than anyone. Serayne leaned toward the coin. Read where my face was meant to go. Oswin struck the ledger with 2 fingers. Final sale records cannot be tried through a mirror. Servant's unlawful sight. Averick's jaw tightened. Serayne did not look at him. Then stop calling my sight unlawful and let the record prove it. The coin on the table rang. This time, the sound did not spread first through noble purses. It moved through the page bearing her name. Blue fire licked along the ink, turning each prepared buyer line into glass. 4 lines burned above the ledger. Face angle entered. Noble buyers assigned. Coin glass witness scattered. Purchase trail sealed. The last line stole the breath from the room. Purchase trail sealed. Serayne understood why Oswin had been so eager to auction her publicly. It was not only punishment. It was closure. If her mouth went to one noble accusation mirror, her eyes to a private inheritance glass, her throat line to a council verdict pane, and her mirror name to some treasury basin, no single surface would hold enough of her to read old purchases again. A whole witness was dangerous. A divided witness became furniture. The ledger opened into a vision. Serayne saw herself reflected in 5 surfaces at once. Her mouth hanging silent inside a noble woman's accusation mirror, her left eye polished into a marriage glass that would never show betrayal, her right eye under a treasury coin basin where payments could pass without memory, her throat line sealed into a command mirror so no future servant could speak a purchase record aloud, her mirror name locked behind Oswin's private ledger clasp, making every remaining angle lawful property. She gripped the table edge with bound hands. Her body was still whole. The mirrors were already rehearsing her absence. Averick descended another step. His shadow reached the base of the auction table but not the coin. If that final sale closes, every purchase record closes with her. Oswin turned toward him. Majesty, it protects the realm from endless accusation. No, Serayne said. It protects buyers from receipts. The blue coin flared. Averick looked at the page, then at Serayne's throat chain. His guilt had changed again. Not softer, more precise. He could no longer hide behind deception alone. Oswin had prepared the sale, but Averick had ordered the sentence that allowed the preparation to become law. If I let this final sale stand, he said, then I am not correcting a servant's punishment. I am preserving the court's erasure. Oswin's voice hardened. You are preserving Crown authority. Averick looked at the clean mirrors around him. Crown authority has been wearing stolen faces. The mirrors dimmed. Oswin moved fast. He tore one page from the ledger and folded it toward the blue coin, trying to press Serayne's final sale order over the purchase record like a lid. The coin's light thinned under the paper. Averick's hand rose. Stopped. Serayne saw the trap again. If he pulled the page away, Oswin would claim the king altered evidence. If she grabbed it, her unlawful sight would be accused of contaminating final sale. If no one acted, her face would become the seal that closed the trail. So she lowered her bound wrists and pressed the white glass cloth around them against the edge of the blue coin. Pain shot up her arms. The coin did not protect her. It read the contact. Read before he uses my face to close his receipts. The auction ledger screamed blue. Final sale active. Mirror servant bound. Witness division prepared. Closure buyer hidden. Serayne's pulse stood. Closure buyer hidden. Oswin's eyes flicked once toward the tall mirror behind the throne. Averick saw it. The blue light climbed that mirror in a single line and revealed one final prepared surface. Not a noble house, not a council pane, but the royal throne mirror itself, waiting to receive Serayne's mirror name as the final lock. The final buyer had not been a noblewoman or council lord. Oswin had prepared Serayne's divided reflection to seal the royal throne mirror, using her mirror name as the closing piece that would make every purchased angle in Vare Hall obedient forever. The royal throne mirror waited for Serayne's mirror name like an open mouth. It stood behind Averick's empty throne, tall enough to reflect the whole court, and flawless enough to make every crime look ceremonial. Blue light crawled up its black frame. revealing the prepared lock hidden beneath the polish. Serayne Lusk, mirror, servant, final ownership angle, throne seal completion. Her face had not yet been sold, but the mirror already knew where it wanted the last piece of her. Oswin Merrick held the torn final sale page over the blue coin. His hand did not shake. Men like him did not need courage when they had taught law to hold the knife for them. Proceeding with final closure, he said, the accused mirror name will be housed under royal authority to stabilize all corrupted purchase records. Serayne felt the oath chain tighten at her throat. Avaric turned toward Oswin. You prepared her name for my throne mirror. Oswin bowed. For the protection of your reign. No, Serayne said, voice raw. For the protection of your buyers. The blue coin rang. The royal throne mirror answered. Not with rescue. With record. 4 lines burned across the mirror's surface. Mirror name entered. Throne seal prepared. Purchase trail closure attempted. Coin glass witness required. The last line held the room still. Required. Not chosen. Not blessed. Required because her reflection remained whole. Required because the court had failed to divide her before the coins remembered what had been bought. Required because Oswin's own system needed the witness intact long enough to close what she had opened. Serayne understood before anyone said it aloud. If her mirror name entered that throne glass, every old purchase would become royal silence. Every stolen servant angle would stay housed beneath noble mirrors. Ashvar's divided reflection would remain lawful. Avaric's clean judgments would be preserved as necessary rule. And Serayne would still breathe, but no mirror would ever return her whole enough to accuse anyone again. Oswin lowered the page toward the coin. Avaric moved, then stopped. His hand closed into a fist at his side. Serayne saw the cost of that restraint, and for the first time she respected it. Not because it saved her. It did not. Because he finally understood that power used too early would turn proof into rumor. If he tore the page away before the record named the closure, Oswin would call it royal interference. If he struck the treasurer, the noble mirrors would close around their stolen angles and claim the Dragon King had panicked. Serayne leaned forward until the oath chain cut into the old wound at her throat. Read what my name was meant to seal, Oswin hissed. Enough. The coin screamed blue. The royal throne mirror split into narrow reflection strips. In one strip, Serayne's mirror name sank into the glass. In another, noble mirrors lost their blue cracks and returned flawless. In another, Ashvar's throat chain tightened until the dragon's golden eye dimmed. In another, Avaric sat crowned before a court where no surface could ever contradict him again. Then the record wrote itself across the throne mirror. Servant name consumed. Noble purchases cleansed. Dragon angle sealed. Royal silence completed. The court stared at the last line. Royal silence completed. Avaric read it once. Then he removed the black crown from his head. The hall shifted. Oswin's eyes widened. Majesty? Avaric placed the crown on the auction table beside the blue coin. Not over it. Beside it. Close enough for the record to read royal authority. Far enough not to bury Serayne's contact beneath his own. Serayne looked at him. He did not touch her. He did not claim her. He only said, My silence purchased her sentence. Let the record weigh beside mine. The coin flared so bright the noble mirrors went dark at the edges. Oswin stepped back. A throne cannot enter purchase record beside a servant surface. Avaric's eyes stayed on the throne mirror. Then that is how you kept the throne clean. Serayne lifted her bound wrists and pressed the white glass cloth against the coin again. Pain burned through her arms, but she kept her voice steady. Read the buyer beside the witness. The throne mirror rang. Coin glass witness active. Living crown entered. Final closure refused. Purchase trail released. Oswin lunged for the ledger. This time Avaric moved after the record had spoken. He caught Oswin's wrist before the blue glass rings touched the page. The court saw it. The mirror saw it. The coin had already named the attempt, so interference had nowhere clean to stand. Avaric's voice turned cold. High glass. Treasurer Oswin Merrick is stripped of seal, ledger, mirror, right, and coin authority. Oswin's face twisted. You will fracture every noble mirror in Vare Hall. No, Serayne said. They were already fractured. You polished over the wound. The blue coins burst open into light. Not saving her. Returning receipts. Across the court, Noble mirrors revealed what they housed. Stolen eyes, mouths, hands, spines, names, throat lines, all the servant angles hidden beneath flawless glass. One by one, those angles loosened from the noble surfaces and turned into blue threads that flowed back toward the auction basin. The reflections did not become bodies. The dead did not rise. But the court could no longer own the missing pieces and call the mirrors clean. The oath chain around Serayne's throat unlocked with a small sound. Not dramatic, not merciful, procedural. The law had lost its surface. Serayne reached up with shaking hands and removed the chain herself. A red mark remained around her throat, visible above the collar of her gray dress. Averic saw it. His guilt did not ask to be forgiven. Good. Forgiveness was not the price of her survival. The royal throne mirror changed last. Its flawless surface clouded, then cleared. For the first time, it reflected Averic with Ashvar behind him, not whole, not free, but visible. The black dragon's throat still bore blue chain, yet the chain no longer cut through silence. The dragon opened his mouth. A low roar moved through the glass. Averic closed his eyes. When he opened them, he looked at Serayne. What do I owe first? The question was not romantic. That was why it mattered. Serayne's voice was rough. Names. The throne mirror answered in blue light. All reflection sails suspended. All servant angles inventoried. All noble mirrors recalled. Coin glass witness restored. Oswin laughed bitterly as guards took his ledger and rings. A mirror. Servant cannot rebuild a court. Serayne turned toward him, chain in one hand, her reflection whole in every blue coin at last. No, but she can show which mirrors were built from stolen faces. Averic stepped down from the dais and stood beside her, not in front of her. Serayne Lusk, he said before the court, leaves this auction not as property, not as contamination, and not as mercy granted by my throne. She leaves as coinglass witness of Verhall, the surface your purchases failed to divide. The court heard every word. So did the mirrors. Serayne looked once at the throne glass, where Ashvar's chained reflection finally remained visible behind the king. Then she stepped away from the auction table on her own feet. Averic walked beside her at a careful distance, crown still lying on the table, because a king who had worn divided silence had no right to place gold above his head before the witnesses were named. Behind them, the blue coins cooled into silver, but none of them forgot. And for the first time in Verhall, no servant had to lose a face for power to call itself clean.